This week's video is going to be about something that a lot of people will say, well, my horse already does that. So I'm going to respond in advance and say, try it out and see if your horse really does this. And that is to go in a straight line for a fair distance. My pen here is 240 feet long. I've put surveyor's ribbon at both ends so that I have a clear target that is straight. I'm going to stay on that path. Now, I can hold this horse on that path. You can probably hold your horse on this path. What I'm after is when I give this mare her head, when I soften my hands and I'm not micromanaging her, does she remain true or does she shift to the left? Does she shift to the right? This simple maneuver will really help your horse to learn to go forward and straight. So if you were to want to run down there for a stop, you're not going to be all over the pen. It also will help, believe it or not, with your circles, because as your horse drifts away from that straight line, your job is to bring him back. Don't hold him back. Just bring him back, release him again, let him make the mistake, and after a bit, he'll stop. Now, if it's real extreme, you may have to overcorrect, and we'll get into that possibly. This mare has done this a certain amount, but not for a good while. So we're going to do this a bit. It is kind of meaningless at a walk for the most part. Although if I've got a horse that's antsy, I'll do this at a walk. It is real good at a trot and good at a lope. So you just steer to this point. When you come to the end, you just sort of break your horse down. What doesn't work as well is if you steer around at the end, your horse is going to start to anticipate that. If you would choose to steer around at the end, the best way to do it is whichever way your horse is leaning, steer the opposite. But I prefer just to come, break down, start the process again. So you lather, rinse, repeat. Okay, so I'm going to take off, go up there. This is testing the distance capability of our remote microphone. So as I get up there further, you may notice, if I can remember this, that I won't be talking as I approach that target up there, because I think that's where we'll cut out if we're going to cut out. So I'm going to start off at a trot, and you're going to have a lovely view of my backside at no additional charge. And you'll also be able to see if my horse wanders off the path and I bring her back. What you shouldn't see is me helping her and holding her on that straight path. So we'll start down the pen. Guess what? She's going to the right already. Okay? Steer back to the left. Going to the right, steer her to the left. A little bit better there, but she still wants to veer off to the right. Steer to the left. Now, at the same time we're working, on keeping her straight, we may also keep her balance front and back. So that if she gets to speeding, I might stop her and back her up. We'll just do that as needed. I'm going to put her on a little trot again. Give her her head, stand pretty straight. I started her, now she's going to the right. So we're learning this mare tends to veer a bit to the right at this point in her life. What's interesting is our barn is located over there. Maybe we can get a quick shot of where the barn's located. And I would normally have expected her to pull a little to the left. That's a magnet. Instead, it seems that her preference is to go to the right, even though it's away from that magnet. So that may be something that really needs to be addressed here. So I'm going to go back up, and you can do this until you have a hole, a rut up the middle of your pen, and that's fine, but you probably want to shift it here and there. You want to make sure that you have established a target up there, whether it's a fence post, whether it's a tree behind the fence, or whether it's something you actually put up there. What I like to do is to overshoot that. There's some trees beyond that. I'm going to visualize going to those trees and keep my head up instead of just focusing down at that target up there. So we'll pick up a trot, give her her head, off she goes to the right. And I move her back to the left. Off she goes to the right, move her back to the left. Off on the trot, give her her head, she's staying, now she's drifting to the left. Steer her back to the path. When you steer, I'm going to stop her here and just show this. What I'm not doing, if she steers herself to the left, is prying her nose and bending her around to the right like this. Because then the horse is going to turn kind of like a snake. You want them in this case to turn a little more like a box and just move over like you'd move a box over. That way you move their whole body over. You don't start their shoulder over and then have to get their rear end to catch up. So if you were to watch me particularly coming towards you, you'll see I pick up and move her over as opposed to pulling her nose to the inside. That also sets you up better for when you want to ride one-handed. So she's staying a little straighter, a little bit off to the right. I'm going to steer her back. A little bit off to the right. Going to steer her back. Okay, she's a little bit off to the right again. So I'm going to stop and say, hey, when I ask you to get off my leg, you should. Up there at that end, the sound may not have been good. The reason I stopped and turned her around was to let her know that she needs to stay between those reins. See, she's going to the right. I'm going to steer her back, but she steers better this time because I corrected her a little more. What I'm not doing, again, is holding her. Instead, I'm correcting her, and by, like horses do, she'll find the middle of those bridle reins where there's no pressure. Off to the right, steer her left. Off to the right. She's looking left, gonna steer her to the right. See, I pick up both hands, move her shoulders, and the rest of her body follows. I'm not just prying her nose over. And there she's staying truer. You may have noticed up there, I bent her around a little. These ends are a good place to work on something else if you choose to. For example, I might choose to yield her hindquarter to turn her instead of turning her on the back end. And that just loosens up her hips for later on when we want to do lead changes. So we'll try again. One correction. And she's gone long and low. That's okay. That's her natural way of wanting to go. I'm not trying to hold her in the bridle because I need to keep her straight. Started to go a little to the left. That time I started a little off target. I was to the right of the target. She stayed there. As long as she was going where I pointed her, I can find no fault. She couldn't know that I hadn't lined her up properly. That's my problem, not hers. So the other thing that I should mention is, I've said don't steer them over, don't steer them over. Well, don't put a leg into them either. You're kind of in neutral. So I'm going to take her up, but she's getting better. A little bit to the right. Steered her one time. Steered her to the right again. There we go. Start her off in that relaxed frame. If she steers to the left a little, I'm going to pick up and say, hey, when I do steer you, I want you to respond. You need to know that you're to go straight, not veer over toward the barn in this case. And there you can see she's staying nice and straight. She took that to heart. So what you're doing through this process is you're working on getting your horse straight. You're getting all their body parts aligned. That is good for a lot of things besides just going in a straight line. Now, I could lope her up and down here, but I don't want to make an overly long video because frankly, this is the kind of dull and boring, repetitious stuff that we all need to do with our horses. But I couldn't fault anybody for clicking the video off if I went through another 10 minutes of doing this. Let me give you an idea though of what this does for you in your circle. So I'll take her out here and I will lope her just because it shows up a little better. So when your horse steers back to straight, your circle is better because your horse is staying between your lines or between your reins. I can steer her over, make that circle a little better. If I need to steer her over, get her back on the line of that circle. But the steering is better because she's learned not to lean. And that's very, very important. Your circle is defeated by a horse leaning one direction or another. And I'm kind of intentionally letting her just go long and low so that she can go off the line if she wants. But she's getting better, not worse, in terms of staying on the line of the circle. And you can steer out, as I did there, or if your horse tends to go out, you can steer in. Whoa. So get yourself a cone, get yourself a milk jug, get yourself a rag, get yourself some ribbon, get a target. And it can be, I've got a 6-acre pasture field out here that I'll ride straight lines in, and that's even better than the pen. It doesn't require great ground. It doesn't require anything except something to steer to. And if you get your horse straight, then when it comes time to steer them around in some other maneuver, they're going to stay between your reins better. There's an old saying that I've heard, always ride your horse straight and forward. That's what this promotes. And I would suggest you try it out before you decide you can do it and see how it works. I figured this mare would start out too good and I wouldn't have much to show, but I had plenty of correction to do. That's horses. So try it out, good luck with it, and I hope it works.